Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever time of day it is. Thank you for tuning in to Conversations with Dr. Don. For your first-time viewers, Conversations with Dr. Don is an ongoing series of 1-hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting people like most of you out there about who they are as unique, one-of-a-kind individuals and about whatever it is that we've decided to talk about. And tonight my guests are Philip Mark Fabre, to my right here, and his mom, Sally Fabre. And we're going to talk about the mental health system and what is it about the mental health system that we decided to title the show this way, because my guests have had some adventures, to put it mildly, with the existing system. And we will talk as we go into the second half of the show about what that means. And hopefully you will learn something and get some entertainment along the way. And I'm interested in learning some more too, because we've chatted about this a little before. I've met my guests in other venues a few times, and we've found we have enough common interests since I'm a retired clinical psychologist. And they have had, again, some adventures. I won't say that word again. So let's see where we go from here. I am a little nervous now because no matter how long I've been doing this, for about 12 years, I'm always nervous for the first 2 or 3 minutes, and I hope you guys will relax me enough where I won't be nervous anymore.
Sounds like a plan.
How are you, Sally?
Normal.
I'm doing good.
Yeah. And how are you, Philip?
I'm doing pretty good. I got the sunburn on the face from the skiing on Sunday. So
It shows you're an outdoorsman.
made the mistake of passing up the sunscreen. Thought it was going to be a cloudy day, and it got me. So here with a big grin on my face.
I like, who was the Joker in the Batman?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, pretty much. The Joker, if he was a good guy.
Yeah. But how are you feeling right now? Okay.
Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah,
Should
you
be
used
doing
to
what
be.
I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah. You were a producer yourself in cable access television a while back, weren't you?
I was.
Uh-huh. And now you're on this side of the camera, and you're a subject. So how does that feel?
It's good to be back, on the Portland airways, I've actually gotten to the point, and I'll talk about this maybe if we get some time, that
Sure.
I've actually solved the question that I used to ask on Open Source Human, which was the title of my show, Open Source Human.
Open source humor.
And I used to have Open Source Human, and the question, where, when, what, how, and who should we pay for an economy that works? And I'm pleased to say that I have the answer to that question now.
Well, I hope you'll share it with us as we go into the show.
I will be able to share part of it, yes.
Open source
Human.
human. Interesting. You've got a mind on you there. So as you know, our show goes in 2 parts generally. The first half or so is bio stuff that you can share with the viewers who you are personally, so they'll get an idea where you're coming from when you talk about the subject matter, the mental health system, and how you've related to it already. So shall we start off with the first half, and who shall I talk to first about who you are, mom or son?
Mom?
Sure.
Okay, ready? And again, if I ask you a question that you don't care to answer, then say, I don't want to answer, or whatever, and we'll just go to the next question.
Okay.
And I always have a trick question for my guests, and I can ask it right now or sometime during the interview and surprise you with it. Shall I ask it now or wait till later on?
I don't care. Either way.
Okay. If I were to ask your best friend, who is Sally? What would your best friend say? She'd say, Sally is...
I think she would say that Sally is a very loyal friend, very compassionate.
Yeah.
Someone who takes an interest in people, is a listener, is somebody that takes a part in the community, is very active in the community, cares about people. I think I've said that a few times. Yeah, just an overall involved, conscientious person.
I like you more than before. I've sensed that, but hearing you say it, yes. Yeah. a human being walking the talk of being a human being. No, anyhow. So, where were you born?
I was born in Cedar Rapids, Iowa.
Iowa.
Yep, I'm an Iowa corn-fed girl.
Okay. And I'm not supposed to ask when you were born because you're a woman, but you've got a son here that's old enough. It says you're at least 21, so we'll skip that.
I don't mind telling my age. It doesn't bother me. So.
When were you born then?
Born in 1955.
55.
Yep.
And anything significant about your cultural heritage other than being an Iowan?
I grew up in a family of 7 children. There were 6 girls. The youngest was a boy. I was second oldest. Our family is German on both sides, so I have 100% German blood. Both of my grandparents came over from Germany, so settled in the United States. And most of my family, in fact, is still in Iowa. I'm the only one that ventured out, along with one other sister. So.
What persuaded you to leave them all back there and go out on your own?
Well, it's always a boy, you know. I followed my boyfriend out here in '78, and we settled here ever since, and then raised our family here. So.
And how many other kids you have besides Philip?
Just one other son, Preston, who's 25.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have a religious preference? Is that an appropriate question?
I am a Christian. Yes, I have a relationship with Jesus Christ.
Oh, wonderful, yeah. I'm a humanist, and we humanists say Jesus Christ was a cool dude.
He is.
He is.
Was. And still is.
And yes, of course, yeah. And your formal education?
High school.
Okay.
I did all my training on the job. Had great mentors throughout my lifetime who saw potential in me and mentored me. Took advantage of the education that I was offered through my jobs, and now I'm self-employed, and yeah, so it was all self-education. Love to read.
I'm largely self-educated, although I'm a PhD, but I learned most of the stuff that's important on my own.
Absolutely. Through experience is the best education.
Yeah, and you mentioned your husband. Are you still married?
No.
You're available?
I am.
Wow, man, which camera? She's available out there, everybody. You're a charming lady, you bet. How do you see yourself politically? Left, right, or centrist, or on a political continuum?
You know, in my 20s and 30s, I was definitely on the left. As I'm maturing and getting older, I'm finding myself more on the right. But honestly, it depends on the issue.
Of course.
I actually belong to National Write Your Congress and try to stay involved and give my opinion on different issues. So
that's important.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
I feel like we each have to take a stand and voice our opinions.
Absolutely. Instead of just rolling over and I got to be careful I start grinding my political axe.
Yeah. There's too much complacency today.
Yes. Yeah. Do you have any memberships in political, social, or civic organizations that you have right now at all?
I'm involved in our local Aloha Business Association. So I'm in charge of the community partnerships. So we are working with the schools and the churches and the community businesses to make changes in the community. So I'm involved in that. I'm also board chair on Love in the Name of Christ of Greater Beaverton. And it's an organization where we partner churches to meet needs in the community. So we've got a group of approximately 40 churches right now working together in Beaverton that are meeting needs, tangible needs right in the community.
Wonderful. So you talked about training on the job. What kind of work have you done in your working life?
I've been in insurance since I was 17.
Insurance!
Yeah. Crazy field. It was something I never picked, but I followed a girlfriend into insurance, started typing policies at 17, back before computers, and just worked my way through the industry. And about 11 years ago, I went out and got an insurance agent's license. It really wasn't what I wanted to do, but I just felt God was leading me that direction. And
Sure.
now I actually own my own insurance agency. It's Agape Community Insurance Agency, and it's more of a ministry, but we also sell insurance. It pays my bills.
Agape, you keep hitting me with these certain things you say and how you say them. Yeah, love.
Yes.
Yeah. And how long have you had that again?
It's my 9th year.
9th year, and it's working for you.
Yes.
Oh. What kind of insurance do you?
Mostly personal lines, auto and home.
Okay.
Family accounts. That's what I love the most, is working with families.
All right. Can you think of any persons from the past or alive today that you particularly looked up to or look up to or admire? Any names come to mind other than Jesus Christ?
Well, definitely. That was later in my life, actually. So, but I have a mentor, Dick Glassmeyer, who took me under his wing in the insurance industry. I'm a John Maxwell follower. I love his readings, his writings about his leadership. I'm a natural-born leader, and I love to read and learn, so he's a big influence in my life. And Joyce Meyer, who has her own ministry and is a woman who is very devoted to changing people's lives through the name of Jesus Christ. But she really spoke to me and brought me back to my relationship there.
Okay.
So those are probably the ones I would mention.
Yeah. Okay. Shall we stop now and take on this fellow over
Yeah.
here? You ready?
Well, my resume is not as impressive.
You haven't
Plus,
lived as long.
I've also been crippled, by the state, by this mental health care system that we're going to be talking about.
Sure.
That's just interstate, all pervasive. So I guess I'm ready to field some questions, but not as impressive specimen yet as my mother.
I bet you are. So let's start with go down the list here. Your full name.
Philip Mark Fabre.
Mark, where'd you get that middle name from?
Mark, M-A-R-C,
Yeah.
is a friend of my dad's that actually introduced him to Oregon growing up. He came out here with him and then came out here to live.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And when were you born?
1981.
Okay. 81. You ready for your trick question?
Sure.
Why were you born?
For fun. I contend my parents, they wanted to have fun.
Mommy's telling on you.
And I'm the result of fun gone horribly right.
All right. Or delightfully right or something like that. Yeah. And your dad culturally, is he German too?
He's part German.
Mm.
Yeah.
By the
Mostly
way,
French.
I didn't even know my mom was full-blooded German from both sides of her family.
Uh-huh.
I guess we haven't discussed that so in depth, but I knew there was a lot of German.
He's more French, though. Yeah, your dad.
You hang around, you may learn some more about your mom with my questions here, so keep your ears open, okay?
All right.
And your formal education?
I got a GED, and I went to a few classes of business and communications at PCC.
Mm-hmm.
And I won't mention litigation as necessarily a degree of satisfactory accomplishment in my life, but it is something, I guess, to mention.
Of course it is. You betcha.
So I have like a paralegal associate's,
Mm-hmm.
equivalency maybe.
How long you been involved in that kind of research? Roughly.
Since 2007.
Wow, that's a while. Okay. Yeah. And you have a girlfriend, a boyfriend, a wife, or a husband, or anything like that?
I'm in an open relationship
Oh.
currently, and It's going pretty well. I mean, we cuddle, and I'm comfortable with that. I'm not so comfortable with the fact that it's a man, but it's what I got to work with. I'm heterosexual, but I'm one of those people who needs to be taken care of and have intimate contacts with friends, and so we look after each other.
Yeah, and it's good for you.
It is.
You betcha. Love is what it's all about among human beings, between human beings. It's the bottom line. Oh, I'm supposed to be talking to you, but your thoughts. That's what I think anyhow. And do you have a religious preference today?
I've recently taken the step in religion from Christianity to a sort of believer's agnosticism, where I really accept that all religions have some truth in them, and that mine has had some great truth for me that's kept me morally upright as I can be. And now I just give God the strength of being unknowable. So there's the agnosticism aspect where I just prefer not to put pressure on myself to know what God's will is. I mean, I tend to think I'm pretty good at knowing it. But I just, I don't seek so much cooperation of any evidence in my mind, subjective or objective.
So then, what is God's will? Will you share that with us?
Yeah, well, that would put me on the spot. I mean, I come here with a lot of anger and passion for what's happened to me, and a lot of questions about just what the process of litigation entails to the human spirit. Asking a human being to judge and to correct memory and the resultant balance of cash in your pocket, and what that is in parallel to what God's will is, and I've had a lot of time to sort of figure out what that means for me as a person, a good person or not. And I'm pleased to say I don't know all the answers to what the problems in the judiciary are, or what problems God has in expressing His will fully on earth. But I do believe in a right, and it's something that I'm meaning to establish. There's something that we bound in our Constitution, inalienable rights, natural rights, to positive law. And I believe in that. I believe in that strength of humanity in government. And I think I have developed a natural right. I've been hurt so bad, without taking that to the nth degree and really having to be destroyed by it. I mean, I've been destroyed. I've been in places where, I've thought it would be better to end my life and things like that because of what's gone on. And I've been outcast, and I've been, exiled basically from my own hometown and my own family and friends. So I'll get into that,
Of course.
And that's the long answer to what I think God's will is now. God's will really is in me, whether I like it or not, whether I'm going to be able to express it or not. No matter how angry or calm I am, I happen to know that I probably know more about it than most people. And it's a sad place to be, because you see so many people not able to believe or give consideration to that fact day in and day out, no matter how logical or how controlling you are of the tone of the argument, no matter how constructive the argument is. They'll never recognize where it's coming from.
Do you ever wonder whether your mom loves you?
No, not so much. I think she's got her own way of loving me, and she's done, you know, a really good job.
Okay, I think I may have slipped my psychologist hat on halfway, so I'll take it off again. This is not that kind of an interview, but I couldn't help but say that because I saw how she was looking at you as you were answering my questions. Yeah, I just saw it. You're fortunate. That's my impression, anyhow. But continuing on and keeping my psychologist hat over here, let's continue on with the regular interview, okay?
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Any persons from the past or alive today that you particularly admire or look up to? Any names come to mind?
There's a lot of people. A lot of
Name me
people
one or
that
two.
I can quote.
Yeah?
And well, I used to be able to quote.
Mm-hmm.
Well, of course, there's the forerunner, Jesus Christ,
Mm-hmm.
which has taken so much of my life and directed it. But then there's, you know, people like Martin Luther King and Gandhi, and, you know,
He sounds like me.
you know,
If I may.
who've been, you know, very momentous for truth and righteousness, and no matter where their movements have gone post-mortem, very effective leaders in their time, very effective.
For me, there are certain truths that are just essential and fundamental, and no matter where you're coming from, humans need to be treated with respect and love. That should be universally accepted. It seems like those names you mentioned, those people exemplified that kind of thinking and actual behavior and walking the talk of loving and being kind to each other. So what else can I ask you before we take a break, and then we'll get into the meat of the show. Let's take a break, maybe, oh, I have one more question for you. Can you make me smile?
Can I make you smile?
You just did it! I knew you could do it!
All right, that was easy. Nice.
So, control room, let us take a break here a little earlier than usual this time, all right, before we get into the meat of the show. Are you ready? Let's put up a slide here. There you go. That's going to be off. Okay, we're back. Thanks for staying tuned. Now, for you viewers who missed the opening of the show, Conversations with Dr. Don is an ongoing series of one-hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting people like my guest here tonight about who they are and about what it is that we're going to talk about tonight, the mental health system, and why it is we've decided to talk about it. That's a broad and general title, but you'll see as we go on why we chose that title. And so shall we start now? And you mentioned some difficulties you had. Why don't you, either one of you start, and we'll go from there. What are you going to tell me about the mental health system and why it is we're talking about tonight? You mentioned litigation.
Well, yeah, I'm currently involved in some litigation. A federal case that's parallel to this natural right that I feel.
A federal case?
It's a federal case.
Whoa.
Basically, you know, I guess we'd have to start at the beginning. You know, I feel like my family was tricked somehow or another into believing that I was mentally ill. And that came to sort of tense understanding between them, you know, separate from myself. They worried about me for whatever reason. I don't know how this was coordinated, that they began to worry about me, but I was involved in a different case. They were sort of against me processing. It was a federal whistleblower case at the time. And I didn't really need the suspicion, but they did bring in the county to speak with me about whatever mental illness that they perceived.
Who's it there you're talking about?
There's a process in Oregon law for counties to evaluate family members or friends or anyone you choose to get evaluated with just 2 people signing a petition. And
as to your mental competency?
As to your mental competency, correct. And so I was put under that suspicion. And the first test I passed, they let me, you know, seized me for the moment, asked me their questions, and I satisfied them, so they let me go, and they you know, it was a sort of a catch and release experience, and I didn't know really what to do. I mean, you know, my family is who I trust, and so I stayed bonded with them, and I think some time went by, and like I said, I had a show on public access and things like that, and so I had some stalking activity sort of develop, and I wasn't sure if it was from the show or from the litigation that I was involved in, or just a friend that sort of went to the dark side and wanted to fool with me somehow. So there's a number of different parties who could have been involved, but I got to the point where people were, you know, coughing and sneezing in the library, like at me, even in the silent reading room. You know, like I would be in the silent reading room, and like you'd think somebody with a really bad cough or sneeze would have the common sense not to come in there, but for months there were people coming in the quiet reading room who would just be coughing and sneezing like crazy, and in that sense where it's like, you know, pay attention to me or die or something like that, you know, and like it was, you know, it seems like something anybody could say, well, that's just a hallucination or a delusion, that couldn't possibly happen. But you think there's a lot of people out there with money to just burn and play with, you know. And if you cross somebody socially, they may just take it upon themselves to start racking up some social hits on you until you break. And basically what's what happened. Months and months went by of this sort of activity, and asking library staff to please help me, you know, isolate these individuals, or please, could you please talk to these people, you know, so I don't have to endure the what would it be? I mean, just the indignity of challenging this, you know, because anybody you challenge says, no, I'm not coughing at you, I'm not sneezing at you, but yet you get followed wherever you go by these same people, you know, and it's like you've never seen them before in your life, but suddenly you see them like 3 or 4 times in these different locations in a day, and it's like, you know, it just, whatever was happening was very unusual, to say the least, just to say the least. So I eventually got to the point where I called non-emergency. They, you know, said I called 911, but I'm pretty sure I remember calling non-emergency. And I mean, I did feel like my life was threatened. So if I called 911, I'm sorry, I felt like my life was threatened.
Sure.
You know, I'm pretty sure it was non-emergency. Anyway, the cops came to the Beaverton City Library, and as soon as they found me in the silent reading room, because I told them where I was and where I needed assistance, they asked me to come out of the silent reading room, and I did, and they immediately grabbed me, put my hands behind my back, and started patting me down and checking me for weapons and stuff like that. And, you know, I called them for assistance, and so I kind of just like in a shock said, geez, if you're not going to listen to me now, you might as well just shoot me, you know, because, I mean, you're treating me like a criminal, and I called you for assistance. I I wasn't disrupting the library. There was no need to consider me dangerous. And so at that point, the officer took the time, this officer, Sean Todd, took the time, and I'm saying that because I didn't get a chance to get into litigation with him, as I'd promised. He took the time to declare me mentally ill right there on the spot, because I was going to commit suicide, obviously, by saying, if you're not going to listen to me now, just shoot me, or you might as well just shoot me. Without making any sudden moves or anything. I mean, he just declared me suicidal and took me to the hospital, and that was the first time I got additionally marked mentally ill. That was the first hospital experience, and they let me go. It was another catch and release program where they let me go, and so then I had this record, to contend with. And I like I said, I was going to set out to do litigation against the officer and the hospital and stuff like that, but I had to learn all the books and the material to defend myself again.
For declaring you mentally ill. Yeah.
Right. I didn't like that. That was, it was really messing with my energy and my self-conception. So, I wanted to go after my reputation and make sure that it was intact. And, I never could quite get in front of the wave that was hitting me. This witch hunt, whatever this witch hunt was that was after me to condemn me as an individual, just was consistently too much for me, because it was only 4 months later, and I was tracked down by some Washington County Sheriff's officer deputies in Beaverton, where they shot out the window of my car while I was sleeping in it.
Shot out the window of your car? Right,
with a sponge round, and it hit me right in the eye. The round went through the window, hit me in the eye, and I was bleeding from the face. And instead of kind of admitting that there was no criminal act, they went into whatever record they had of my mental illness and started asking me questions about, are you a danger to yourself or others, or, are you going to hurt yourself or others, and this nonsense, and then made me get in an ambulance and forcibly took me to St. Vincent's Hospital.
Why did they say they shot your car? What was the reason that they approached you?
Well, they assumed that I was
suicidal. That's what they told me.
Right. Okay. Well, that's interesting, because I don't even know. The police reports don't illuminate their reasoning.
Sure.
There was no probable cause. They just assumed that there was some death that had occurred or was imminent that they could heroically intercept, but without any indicators. There was no cries for help or gas coming from the vehicle. So this is the topic of the federal case I'm working on.
So you said your mom was tricked earlier on when we first started talking. How was your mom tricked? You said your mom was tricked.
I'm not certain. I got caught smoking pot at an early age, 16 years old, and my parents made me see a therapist, a psychiatrist, in fact. And psychiatrists tend to prescribe drugs and deal with things in this dreary clinical fashion. There's no therapy of any kind. They want to put you on drugs and label you something and give the parents some insurance that their son is being taken care of. And so I got labeled paranoid schizophrenic because I told the doctor when I smoked pot that I had experienced some paranoia towards friends when smoking pot, and paranoia that didn't last after that. So that was how my parents got the idea that I was paranoid schizophrenic. Now, how they got the concept 10 years later, over 10 years later, without being on pills, that I was somehow in need of mental health care in that immediate sense, where they needed to bring the county in, I have no idea. I still have no quite clear understanding of that.
Are you taking medication now?
I am. I am taking medication now. It's been a very spiritual thing for me, because I didn't have problems with hearing voices or anything like that when they first initiated these contacts with me, but somehow my parents were assured that I heard voices, and that was not the case. And so, you know, after all this time being taken away and whatnot, I actually did start to recognize and acknowledge that I was hearing voices, and that was happening. But there was no drug use to associate it with. There was, you know, nothing to associate it with. So, you know, it very much made me suspect my family, and I dealt with that. And, you know, I'm now hooked on this risperidone medication that I can't take without getting like a burning sensation throughout my body, you know, if I stop taking it. And it's not that the voices are too much for me, because I do hear voices. They don't make me dangerous, you know, to myself or others. If anything, these external treatments make me dangerous to myself and others. You know, these projections of who I'm going to be as a person, and labels of just disabling quality. Those are the things that make somebody want to be violent to themselves or others.
So you're under the care now of a psychiatrist?
Yes, I am. Yeah, I suppose I am.
Yeah, and you mentioned the federal case in where you were a whistleblower or something, or what was that about? Some litigation going on?
Yeah, well, basically there was a problem where there was no particular rule that I knew of as a driver, as a commercial motor vehicle operator, but that I sensed had to be in the cards, had to be in the Code of Federal Regulations somewhere to prevent the experience that I was going through in New York City, driving and being overstressed and lost 3 times in one day, and getting to the shipper and being in a kind of shady area, and people running cars in and out of buildings like late at night, you know, and like being told by the shipper that it was sort of an unsafe area to be in. She'd tell her son just as much, you know, to be cautious and not stay here overnight. You know, and then to have the machine in the truck that tells me my hours of service, you know, whether I can drive or not legally, fail in this scrambling sense that's a shock to the system. That was just the straw that broke the camel's back, and I took off like a guinea pig and went home. I didn't go home. I actually took the truck to point B, from A to B, like I was supposed to, dropped off the load, just went 2 hours over time.
And you were in New York City?
I was in New York City, the area, yeah. I was in
you were working?
Long Island. An old bootlegger's town, come to find out later, you know, and so it had that vibe to it, and you know, I think I made the right call. You know, I thought there's an emergency provision after the 11-hour rule for drivers to continue driving if there's a safety issue or if there's just extrinsic factors that qualify. And so I thought, I'm at the 14-hour rule. There should be some recognition of a driver's right to avoid the same safety issues at that point in time, but there weren't. There was, however, a law that provided for something called ill or fatigued driver, and I still profess to this day that was the key to keeping me employed gainfully at my former employer. And the topic was avoided. I was, you know, I was surrounded and made to look like a liar and a fool, and, you know, beat down until I had nothing left in me to defend. And the bottom line was, they had a faulty computer system that they refused to acknowledge was the cause of my leaving the city that night, basically. You know, that it was failing, and I wasn't able to get my hours, and I was in this stressful situation, and I was having to make a call, and, you know, it wasn't, you know, I mean, it was pretty much...
You had trouble with your employer.
Right, I had trouble with the employer, and they didn't want to fix the safety system that, you know, was basically responsible for me making the call that night to go to the point B and get out of the city while I still had the power in me to do so.
So you're unhappy with the system because they've labeled you a paranoid schizophrenic.
That is a separate issue, yes.
A separate issue. So
what started most of this, Dr. Don, is when he was fired from the job.
In New York City?
Well, he drove
6 days later
for Warner Trucking Company, and it's an automatic suspension when you go over your driving time. And he was told to drive the truck back to Nebraska, park it for 3 days, and then he'd be out on the road again. Well, Philip is a man of justice, and he felt it was not the proper treatment for what he had to choose. And so what started from that point on, when he showed up at my house and said he had been fired, is the whole point of him being fired went to the core of his soul. And what we saw from that point on was him so focused on clearing his name that he did nothing but eat, live, and breathe in the law.
So this book then is the Oregon State Constitution?
Correct, yeah.
And why are you reading it?
Well, I thought I would bring it in to sort of illuminate my right, my natural right that is developed. Article 1, Section 1, natural rights inherent in people. We declare that all men, when they form a social compact, are equal in right, that all power is inherent in the people, and all free governments are founded on their authority and instituted for their peace, safety, and happiness. And they have at all times a right to alter, reform, or abolish the government in such manner as they may think proper.
You want to do something to the government?
No, and I've been accused of being willing to do as much. So I tread in dangerous waters. I've been shot at before, and you know, I don't know what in Portland is to be expected now. So I'm very cautious about what I do. I've been accused of being provocative and 2 or 3 different occasions. But it really comes down to this right now. I have to essentially wage a war. You know, I know that I have been done wrong, and that the laws are conflicting in the direction of how good, mentally healthy human beings function. And I've broken no law. I've never been, convicted of a crime in my life. And, you know, to have my life go downhill so dramatically after I basically bound myself to the law and being lawful more than ever was more than I can take. And I think that not most people, but the average bloke on the street, that gets treated this way is going to have some will to get back at people, and not legally. I mean, the way I've been treated and really abused speaks toward bloody revolution. It speaks towards lack of representation in government and abuses of power. You know, I met Governor Kulongoski, and his people spread a rumor that I assaulted him when I tried to speak about the mental health laws in the state and how they were fundamentally intrusive on the public and causing a fear to permeate in people regarding being taken away, and that I was a subject of such takeaway instances, and I had ideas to change the way that the system worked. And so he told me to bring in a proposal the next day. I actually met him in person. He told me to bring in a proposal the next day. I did. I lobbied for weeks, and nothing happened. But yet, once I got taken away again, after another misinterpretation of my interaction with the government, there was this allegation that I had assaulted the governor that I had to contend with.
What's it based on that you assaulted the governor? What happened?
Well, they basically said that I shook the governor's hand and stepped in and refused to let go.
Did you do that?
I did not.
Sure.
If anything, the governor shook my hand for longer than I was comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
And I really appreciated the time that he took with me, and I thought all went well. But someone got it in their mind that I needed to be warned from that position, from that lobbying
How soon after you shook
stance.
the governor's hand did you get this warning, or what happened then?
I didn't find out that I had essentially assaulted the governor in records until I was committed a second time to the Oregon State Hospital.
The second time you were committed, the first time you were committed to Oregon State Hospital, how long were you there?
I was there 6 months.
6 months. And the second time, how long were you in Oregon State?
9 months.
9 months. How long have you been out of the state hospital now? Roughly.
It's been over 6 months. I got out in September.
Yeah.
September last year.
And what kind of a satisfaction are you looking for now?
I'm looking for no less than holistic system change. I have isolated some fundamental liabilities of officers and doctors in the field who follow Oregon Revised Statute 426.228 and 426.232 in creating police officer holds and hospital holds on people suspected of being mentally ill. There are fundamental liabilities, and they're not just particular to Oregon. They are systemic throughout the country. And this makes me feel like I have a right to challenge the president himself on the issue.
So you believe that the authorities declared you paranoid schizophrenic and interrupted your life and your daily living because they decided that you were sick.
Correct.
And you want a remedy for that.
They decided specifically that I was dangerous.
That you're dangerous.
Which is just code for witch in the modern age.
So what are you looking for now when you're talking about these statutes, and you want to change the law or change how the system works such that this won't happen to somebody else?
Right. There are some fundamental changes I'm after. And I was at the time when I met Governor Kulongoski, and I am put off the course of interacting with a government who is not responsive to my needs. But I have come up with new solutions. One of the solutions is to treat law as a psychiatric implant. You know, essentially every law creates a memory, and memory of that law keeps us safe in our environment. So the law is like a beneficial implant that we all endure in memory. You know, the problem is when you get taken away for something as ticky-tack as dangerousness, which is not codified as a crime in the law, you get taken to a hospital as opposed to a prison, and you're supposed to actually consider what you did wrong, when essentially you've done nothing but be quote-unquote dangerous in some way.
And the authorities decide that you're dangerous, and you disagree.
And the authorities decide that you're dangerous, and you have to endure discerning how to change that behavior somehow. I mean, that's if they don't hypnotize you into believing that all you need is this pill or this medication, and all your problems will be solved. Because that's all they do. They lock you up in a hospital, and doctors cover up their liability by just pushing a pill down your throat and turning you out into the world. And this needs to stop. Like the law is the psychiatric implant of choice. You know, people need to be given the discernible, objective course of being lawful, of recognizing how they may have been dangerous, and turning from that, and you know, and making amends, and following out the door better for the experience. But the fact is one of the things I'd like to change is in these hospitals, there is no right, you know, there's no Miranda right or anything given out. So you go there and you're expected to talk, and you're actually prodded to talk, and you're taken under this specter of medicine and coddled and you know, tricked into turning against your family and your friends and yourself. And there's no law book there. There's no way to reference what the law is in that situation, how you're supposed to be handled, what steps you should be prepared to undergo next should they decide to civilly commit you, or anything like that. It's just traumatic experience on top of traumatic experience, on top of liability, on top of lack of direction for good behavior. Yeah, it's just a total crime.
I hear you. So there is a presumption that the law enforcement people are trained to use their best judgment as professionals to consider the possibility of someone being dangerous to themselves or others, and they act on that judgment. And I like to think, for the most part, that judgment is fairly objective and fairly good. Not always.
We'd like to believe it.
Yeah, unless you're a victim and they declared you incompetent or a danger to yourself or others. And then your reaction is to resist and fight back and take that stigma away from who you are.
In the most lawful manner possible.
Yeah, and how are you going to do that? You're going to go to court or what? I'm
going to federal court. I'm going to federal court against some of the officers and doctors who took me away one of the times. There are many things I haven't been able to challenge because it's just beyond my powers as a one man to challenge lawfully.
You have an attorney?
I cannot afford an attorney. No, I had an attorney at one time for this same case that I'm in court over now. But as soon as I got taken away an additional time, he wanted nothing to do with me. And that was because, I mean, I can go into it. It's just been one tragedy after another. But you know, one of the other things I'd like to address.
We've got just a couple of minutes left, and we're going to have to sign off.
Okay, beautiful. I'll try to make this short. You know, there's these police officer safety bulletins that they utilize in this conspiracy to basically create a witch hunt against people in this Oregon society. You know, they can send out these police officer safety bulletins that say such and such is dangerous because of whatever, and they're not adjudicated objectifications. They're just people's feelings. They're just people's feelings and opinions, and what they're hearsay. And so I got rolled into this whole police officer safety bulletin nonsense that I was this dangerous guy who wanted to get a gun and whatever, and I, you know, like, and there was all this fear about like me and my lifestyle, because I was at night sleeping in my vehicle in and around the area in legal parking spots, and there's nothing wrong. I checked the Oregon codes, statutes, and checked county codes and city codes. There's nothing illegal about sleeping in your car at night in legal parking spots. And I just was challenged time and time again. I got these more and more police officer safety bulletins. I had my family basically thinking that I was mentally ill, and I never did anything wrong. Just bottom line, I never did one thing wrong.
Time is running out.
Okay, sir.
And you're pursuing this with the idea of getting some resolution of this such that the authorities are not tracking you, are watching you, and accusing you of being a danger to yourself or to others, such that you can lead a normal, average life like an average citizen.
That's the idea.
You're going to keep me posted on your success and how this is going?
I would like to do that.
Let me know.
You know, there's one major quality that I'd like to address before we turn off air. The doctors in these hospitals are taking the specter of medicine to a judicial level. There's no representation. That's a liability of theirs. They allow for there to be no representation when people go in and see them and have this evaluation of whether or not they're dangerous to themselves or others. The other thing is there's no objective record. After you get admitted to the hospital, they have cameras everywhere, and they're 24/7 in your bed, everywhere. It's a nightmare. But when you're first evaluated, there's no camera and there's no evidence that you can later turn to and say, see, I wasn't crazy, judge, or see, I wasn't crazy. There's no objective record. They just trust the doctor's opinion. When the doctor is basically liable, if they turn you out in the street, and you do something wrong, bam,
they're going to yell at me in the control room, so we
all
need
right,
to stop for now.
Okay.
But keep me posted on how this is working out for you, all right? So it's close to time for us to stop visiting and get ready to say goodnight. I have a few public service announcements I'd like to talk about now. Can we put the first one up, please? To get the Dr. Don Show local broadcast schedule, go to my website, www.donbaham.com, and click on Present Day Activities, and there's my local broadcast schedule on my website. And now let's talk about my next slide here. To go watch Dr. Don shows on the web, my TV shows, 100 or so, are available on my website again, www.donbaham.com, and click on favorite links. There's a whole bunch of shows where I've interviewed all kinds of people. There's musical interviews, there's you name it, all sorts of guests, and they're all good and interesting. So go to my website. And I want to tell you about the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union. Without the ACLU, our civil liberties would be down the tubes. So go to that website and learn more about the ACLU. What do you think of the ACLU?
They don't take cases.
Okay.
I love them, but they don't take cases.
Limited money and time. That's
beautiful.
why. So, to get Dr. Don Show's broadcast by other stations around the country, ask your local public access station to go to www.pegmedia.org and learn how you can have my shows broadcast from your local area anywhere in the country. So go ahead and do that. And now, end corporate personhood. That's my favorite. We got to end corporate personhood now in America, so that corporations are considered persons with the rights of individual persons. They have too much power now, such that ordinary citizens are by the wayside as far as human rights. And thanks for watching. And remember, KFC, I got to sign off. And not that KFC, not Kentucky Fried Chicken. Dr. Don's KFC. Kind, friendly, and charitable. Be kind, be friendly, and be charitable to you too. And you, and you, and you. Thanks again for watching. We'll catch you next time.